everyone. Welcome to another episode of People's Stories. I'm your host Priyanka, and today we are going to speak to Mr. Tobias Brinck, who is heading the compensation and benefits function at one of the multinational organizations called Cree Livy, and he is based out of Sweden. Also, he's my former boss. In this episode, we've spoken about a lot of topics, compensation and benefits related. We've also spoken about how AI is impacting this particular industry. What can you expect your regular workday to look like? How can you get into this particular areas? What are some typical challenges that you would face in this area, and how can you overcome them? We've had a lot of fun recording this particular episode, and I have personally taken a lot of takeaways for myself. I hope you also enjoy listening to it as much as I did. We've also tried to divide this entire episode into categories, which you can see as chapters in the episode. So feel free to guide yourself to a specific chapter if you find that topic interesting. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let's get right into it now. I'm super happy to have you. For everybody who does not know, Tobias has been my former manager, and so it's really interesting to talk to you about your past experiences and how you've come over here. And in terms of like what his experience has been, Tobias has started working as a tax associate at Deloitte and has worked his way through becoming the head of compensation and benefits at Cree Livy in Sweden right now. And we are going to get into much more details of your professional journey. But let's start with you as a person. So how would you like to introduce yourself, and where are you coming from?
I would introduce myself as quite a lot of I'm born and raised on a football pitch, I would say. So I'm born outside a quite small city called Uddevalla on the west coast of Sweden, which is fairly close to Gothenburg. So grew up there with my two siblings, my mom and dad, and basically spent all my time that I had on various football pitches all around that area. So grew up and in that small city, moved away when I was around 20, moved to France, and then from France back to Sweden, one small journey to Brussels in Belgium, and then to ending up in Stockholm after that. So that's a little bit where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I still remember our conversation that we had about football here in Germany, and how you were like, you should go and see one of the football matches, and where that passion is coming from. So it's really interesting to see how interested you are in football and how you associate yourself to that. I think you also mentioned about you being the coach of your daughters, right?
Exactly. So right now I'm spending time on various football pitches all around Stockholm, coaching my daughter's team. So a bunch of 10-year-old girls, trying to get them to.
Going?
It's going quite well, actually. We had a game earlier today, so that was fun. So you learn a lot as a person and as a father, I guess, when you get to see your kids in those kinds of environments and see them grow and see them compete and see them both succeed and fail. So
Do you remember like one of your like super proud moments out of this?
I would say one of my most proud moments around my daughter and her team is just the fact that she came home and said, "I want to play football." And I was like, "What do you?" Sure, I watch a lot of football and always watched a lot of football, but she has never ever really had that kind of interest. And none of her friends plays football, so it basically come from right out of the blue that she wanted to play football. So we had to like, where can she even play football close by? So we found a team, and she's been playing for almost a year, and she's made all her friends at school start playing as well. So she made all her closest friends to be interested as well. So I guess that's a very proud moment where she comes home and says she want to play football from out of the blue, and then she just does it. And then I became the coach, and then she brought all her friends to play football as well. So I think that's a proud moment.
I think you're not trying to take the credit, but then it has to come from you, like I'm sure the genes are there. And so that the interest is coming from there.
Yeah, my dad is the same. So I grew up on a football pitch right by by the side of my dad as well. And my brother played, and my sister played, and So a real football family. So it's difficult. And as when we visit my family with my family, then it's everyone all around there also plays football. So my cousins, my sister's husband plays football. So it's a lot of football all around our family. So it's difficult not to get the interest, I guess.
It's interesting to see like how, how all do you get influence. Like it might not be a direct influence that you have on your kids, for example, but then she's seeing so much of football around her, so it definitely has an influence on her.
And I think that
Um,
it's really good as well to play football. I've learned a lot. Coming back to my like professional career, I have a lot to thank football and being part of teams and also being trying to succeed on an individual level as well. So I think that that background has shaped me a lot and has given me a lot of strengths and a lot of things that I've been able to take with me also in my more professional career. Even though I didn't succeed becoming a professional football player, I still got to. I brought a lot of things with me
yeah.
from football into my professional life as well. So
But I mean,
that's
I can say that you are a good professional in general. So I'm sure you've taken a lot of things from there. But what has been your biggest takeaway from like your football journey?
I think from quite early age being assessed and being reviewed on everything you do. Um, with that starting very, very early on, you develop some sort of calmness towards stressful situations. I think that that's one of my biggest strengths as a professional is I'm managing to stay calm in basically all kinds of situations. And I think that that comes a lot from having been pushed towards assessments and performances from a very early age, and having to develop a um, a way of handling that. I think that that's one of the things that I think or cherish the most from my football career.
And how would you typically handle that kind of stress? Like, do you have some kind of I don't know, advice in terms of, how can you keep your, because I can totally say that you are like one of the most calm persons I have experienced in my professional career. So what do you do to remain that so calm?
If you see me stressed one time or in the office, then something's really bad going to happen, I guess. So up until that moment, no, but I think that I'm quite comfortable in myself that I will be able to solve most things that comes up. And it's not that I don't think that it will go easy, but I I I have a tendency to be able to see that okay, this is how we solve it, and then I get quite comfortable in okay, I know that's a lot of work behind it, but I can put down that work in order to get it done. So in all situations uh, that I've been put towards, I think that I have a possibility to just solve it with a lot of hard work, but it's usually solved.
Yeah,
Um,
okay. So I
so
mean basically breaking things down into like smaller parts, and then so it does not look like so overwhelming to begin with.
exactly, and as long as not someone is going to jail or is about to die, I think that it's perfectly, it's kind of fine. Fine, we're going to solve most things. But when we have prison or death in the in the calculation, then it's bad.
Yeah,
I had
yeah.
one of those cases where prison actually was on the on the consequences side. So I was actually a bit stressed in that situation where where prison could have been a potential outcome of that situation.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, sometimes just stepping back and seeing like the bigger picture, it helps a lot because like everything that we do looks very, very important to us. But if you like look from a higher view, then you will see like, it's like what kind of impact it's going to have. Like that becomes an important criteria in seeing how stressful you should be about those things. And so I would like to I would like to kind of move in the direction of professional career now that we are talking about a lot of professional stuff, anyways. So, the idea of this podcast is basically to kind of create more awareness around this particular profession, which is compensation and benefits. And you also bring like a lot of other related expertise like tax. So, let's talk about, from that perspective of you started working at Deloitte as a tax associate and you have moved your way up to become like the global compensation and benefits head at a big multinational company. So how did this experience look like? Like how did you start and how was the transition like?
I would say that I've always been tax associate. I worked within individual taxation and a lot of expats. So that's basically where I kicked off my professional career when joining Deloitte back in, is it 12 years ago now or something like that. But through that work, you got to see expats are generally very senior employees who are being sent around the world to help out big multinational companies. So when you help them from a taxation kind of perspective, then you also get to see different kinds of compensation schemes. You get to see different benefits. You get to see different types of incentive programs, both long-term incentive plans, short-term incentive plans, commissions, equity schemes. So by my tax background, I got to see all of these quite interesting areas, and I was a bit intrigued by, okay, why are you providing this kind of compensation, or why did you provide this type of long-term incentive plan, or why do you have those kind of benefits? Why do you offer these to these individuals, and what is it that gets them to enjoy them in a way, and how can you connect that to performance? So I think that's where my interest for compensation benefits started. So even though it was from a taxation point of view, where as a tax associate and then tax consultant, I did the whole big four kind of steps up to manager at Deloitte before leaving. So uh, I developed an interest for compensation and benefits, and at Deloitte we also had more of a total rewards group, which I joined, which was not from a taxation point, but also more from maybe more of an H or comp and ben kind of perspective. So already at Deloitte, I started moving towards compensation and benefits, and then taking on my next role at SAS, which was a bit in between finance and HR. I was based out of the group control function at SAS, but working towards HR quite a lot and working towards finance quite a lot. So a little bit in the middle there. So I got to see the financial side of, okay, how is this impacting our P&L? What are the costs related to these initiatives that we're doing? How is the union negotiations? What can we do in terms of when at SAS there's always a cost savings program. So how can we make a better kind of compensation structure within certain groups and still offer a good kind of place to work and a good compensation, even though we need to reduce the compensation in a way or another in order to save money for the company. So that was extremely valuable to see compensation and benefits from a little bit different perspective compared to how you might look at it from maybe an HR perspective. So see the cost side of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like one of the biggest challenges as well that people generally in comp and ben space face because it's like you are kind of in between like the company strategy and the employees' benefit. And so, can you share like one of your experiences where you faced like a challenge in this area and how did you handle that situation?
I think a lot of this kind of work is you need to have trust from your different stakeholders. So I think that to build trust, even though it's from the CEO, it's from the unions, it's from the normal employees, it's from managers or whatever your stakeholders are. I think that's if you gain the trust from the different stakeholders and able to be transparent in what you're doing, I think that then that's the key to many things. So be able to a little bit juggle trust between different stakeholders who have different perspectives. That's the key to solve many things. And at SAS, we had that kind of not much trust between maybe the employees or unions and the employer. So we had a situation with a payroll system which was switched. So with the switch of payroll system, also the vacation days, how to calculate them for people working in shifts, was changed to the downside for the employees. So the unions and the employees felt that that the employer had like blindside them a bit, and in order to save money, because it was less beneficial how that new system calculated the vacation days for them. So, and how do you redo that, and how do you regain the trust from employees, from unions, that okay, now we need to fix this. It wasn't our intention to have a different way of calculating the vacation days. That came up a little bit as a surprise for everyone, but the trust was broken, and they felt that okay, you're not taking this seriously, and you're just trying to save money, which wasn't really the case. But they didn't matter how many times you had to say that this wasn't our intention. We will do everything we can to fix it. So that was a huge challenge, and there was more than 1,000 employees concerned around here. So you had to regain the trust from 1,000 employees and the union representatives, and to come up with a solution that, okay, now we feel that we're being fairly compensated for this new way of calculating the vacation days. So that was a real challenge, but we managed to, by providing almost individual individual calculations and individual letters to each and every of the employees, and we were able to automate that and send it out and do the corrections. And we managed to get the union representatives on our side saying that the company has actually really tried to fix this and to compensate you for the change, because it wasn't the intention to do this like negative change for the employees. So by being extremely transparent with exactly how everything was calculated, exactly how each and every individual were compensated, and being able to show that to every employee, made us very successful in regaining the trust. And after that, we had a great relationship and a mutual understanding for things within that space. So that was a real challenge, which was ended well this time. So that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that, because in terms of compensation benefits, like my personal experience is that it's such a sensitive topic for like everybody who's involved, that you have to be like super careful. And I think communication strategy like is super important. And also like the timing of communication. So if you communicate something like 2 days later, it has no more, like it no more holds the same value as, if you would have communicated like 2 days earlier. So I think what you are communicating, how you are communicating, and when you are communicating, like all of these three things become super important. And if you can individualize, and given like now we have a lot of AI and you can do a lot of customization and like those kind of things, just basically using all of that to your benefit usually helps a lot. One more thing that I was interested in your previous experience is that I see that you've worked with like international mergers and acquisitions. And from what I understand, so when you have to kind of combine like the comp strategy of like two companies together, and if the companies are like both the companies are big and they have like established compensation strategies, it becomes like a little challenging that ways as well. So if you could shed some light on, how your experience was there, and how did that transition look like? Because it's a big project from my understanding.
It is a really big project to merge companies, and extremely important for the both companies, I would say, because both, or at least the acquiring company, spends a lot of money in acquiring another company. And for some, would you have as a company chosen to acquire this company for a reason? They want the staff, or they want some what of the product, or and see a strategy, or have a strategy to use that company's strengths. And if you don't handle the people in a correct way or in a good way, then there's a risk that the entire acquisition will fail. So I think that the complement side of an M&A is maybe maybe not the first thing that companies look at. They start when looking at a merger or an acquisition. Then the people around it is not the first thing that they look at. They look at, okay, this company is something, or a company we want to acquire. But second to that, I would say that the people is extremely important to keep happy. And I think also that, a little bit referring back to what I just said from my previous experience, that we experience with being transparent and being very honest in what you're doing. This is exactly the same when having an acquisition and moving people into another company, because people generally don't like change, and especially not change that they can't control. And when you're being acquired by another company, people have thousands of questions. What's going to happen to my role? What will I be doing? How will my compensation be? Will I be laid off? What's going to happen? We have an entirely new company, which we don't know. What's going to happen with our culture? What's going to happen with our like Friday ficas or whatever it might be? So very small questions as well, which are big for the employees. So that is I would say, a huge challenge when doing the acquisitions. And it's quite often that acquisitions aren't very successful just because of that, that you lose the employees. And what the complex thing of it is that, especially when you acquire companies who have presence in different countries. So what we did with one of the acquisitions we did, we had employees in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different countries. Okay, how do we make sure that that we're seeing each and every one of these individuals in those countries, and make sure that we, from that country's perspective, is doing it in a good way. So and I want to come back a little bit to the transparency here, that okay, we're not here to do anything. We're not here to harm anyone, or to make anyone's lives worse than it was before, because we do want to have it as a successful kind of project. And so being extremely transparent in this, and as you were into as well, with communication, when to communicate, how to communicate, there is always space to do things much better than you do. You can always develop, you can always communicate better, you can always gain people's trust a bit better with the communication that you send out. But maybe my biggest lesson from these kind of projects are to get the founders, or the top management of the company that you're acquired, to get them on your side, because the employees, they trust, usually at least, or generally, they trust their senior management, they trust their founders. And if you can get them to really buy into that and be a little bit of a spokesperson towards the employees, I think that then you have gained a lot of things. Because then if the senior leaders of the company you are acquiring speaks for you, then it's much easier to gain the trust from the employees, and say that, okay, this is a fair kind of process that we're running here.
And also, I think from an operational perspective, like generally, you would have to kind of compare, like, okay, what kind of compensation strategy and philosophy do we have, like in one of the companies? And as you said, like there are many countries. Most of the times, the benefits or the compensation could look like country specific as well. And if the other company that's kind of being acquired or merged has like different kind of philosophy, or they have different benefits, sometimes it could also be that there's not a balance between what's offered here and what's offered there. Like, would you have any advice on typically how to handle that situation where, let's say, the compensation and benefit strategy is not like the same, and sometimes also not balanced.
Yeah, and do your do your homework, I would say, and to really review each country and to like write down, okay, what do they actually offer in the company that we're acquiring, and do on like a side by side comparison. Okay, how does it look? Where are we better? Where are we worse? Where do we need to compensate? Where do we need to like be kind of tough and remove something, or and where can we compare that to something that we offer on our side instead? So I think that, and also as like coming back to the transparency, when you've done this and when you have come to a decision saying, okay, this is, let's say, for example, we're acquiring a company with employees in Germany. Okay, in Germany, the company we're acquiring offers this. We are offering this, and then have almost on a row by row like detail. Okay, how is this? Is this a beneficial move for the employee, or is it to some extent less beneficial? How do we do to compensate, or how do we communicate around the change? Are we thinking, okay, you will lose this benefit, but instead you're gaining this benefit? We take them out. And as said, get the senior leaders of the company or the founders or whomever it might be, but the ones that the employees listen to, get their approval to, okay, this is a fair process. This is how we have done it. And then be able to communicate that towards the employees that this is exactly how it looks. And this is exactly how we have been thinking. This is how we will compensate you. This is your new compensation. These are your new benefits. We know that it looked differently before, but we have thought that this way of compensating, this way of mediating the difference is how we would go about. And when you have that, and it's like both my company then and the other company, and when we have like a set list of, okay, this is what we believe is a good transition, then you communicate that and respond to each of the employees' questions around it. Okay, but I'm losing 2 days of vacation, or I'm losing my gym membership. Okay, but instead we're having this. You get weekly feedbacks, something
Yeah,
like that,
yeah, totally.
from a Swedish
Yeah.
company. So that's, but it's a huge challenge and something that shouldn't be overlooked at all. And be available. I would say as well. Don't hide behind like behind processes or behind something else. That be very open, saying that this is me, because it's always kind of, it's easier when people get a face on someone instead of just emails.
Yes.
Because if they get a face on someone, they've heard that person speak, they like, then they can relate to that person much better than if they just get emails or they just see a name in like spreadsheets or whatever it might be. So
Yeah.
be very like be visible, I would say as well.
I have actually been surprised like so many times that we've had like very heated conversations on emails, on like written conversation. But then whenever we've gotten into like a call with that same person, it has always been like super mellow in compared to how it was written. So it's basically adding to your point of adding a face to that, that conversation. And that becomes like, yeah, there's a person behind this, like somebody's caring about this whole conversation. So I think that
And I think that
definitely.
that can be, yeah, that can be translated into many areas as well. Just especially when you work with multinational teams, like the importance of meeting and doing things together. I think you can't really underestimate that, those things. That you should always do that, because when you are in a situation where like, or it's you have a limited budget, or don't have the time to do things, you have met this person who you're arguing with. You have been on a dinner or a lunch or an afternoon, or whatever it might be. You know that this person don't have bad intentions. So I think that physical meeting, or at least to have a face on someone, is super important in many aspects of the professional life.
Yeah, for sure. And this actually brings me to my next topic, which is around comp and ben in general. So when we look at this comp and ben space, like if you look from an outside perspective, usually it talks like your roles and responsibilities look like you take care of compensation philosophy and benchmark like salary benchmarking, compensation bands, the entire annual compensation review process, and then benefits, etc. How do you see this space? Like, do you see it, this is it, or you would like to add like more things to it? Because I know there are more things to it.
I would say there's a lot of more things to it, which I think there are aspects which I think is, or areas which I think is the responsibility of an employee of an employer, and that is also to take care of its employees, and that's both caring of the employees, but also very selfish because we want, or the company wants the employees to be healthy and be good employees basically. So I would say that especially the benefits when it comes to taking care of employees also when they have the difficult situations, being on prolonged sick leave or um, having a difficult time in their private life, and to be able to offer a good um, like palette of uh, things around that will help you in those difficult times. I think it's super important that you have a good, you're not cutting back on good insurances, taking care of employees when they're sick, because we want them to be good employees to be able to come back. Um, so I would add that kind of employer responsibility, which I think goes a little bit further than just the paying a salary, because there are it's people you're working with, and it's people working for you as a company. So I think that yes, of course, we're going to do comp and ben core things, which is compensation reviews. It's going to be bonus agreements and bonus calculations, maybe. It's going to be incentive plans and all of that. But I think that yes, that's the core of it. But it's also a responsibility to be able to take care of employees when things happen. That you have a good life insurance for your employees. That you have, if something happens to your employee and like the worst thing could happen, that you then have a way of taking care of the employee and the employee's family in those situations. Uh,
Yeah.
I think that's one thing with comp and ben which I enjoy, and also that okay, pension, super important that you also take care of the employee when he or she has stopped working. That
Mm.
we have a proper pension plan for our employees, so they have like a safe space also after their professional career.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll just add like one more specific conditions is like relocation cases where when employees like moving from one country to the other country for work related reasons. And that also is like super daunting sometimes because, you don't know the ways in that country. So I think that's also something that kind of adds to the complexities and where you have to be careful about, how the employee is being managed in general. Um, and so, Tobias, can you talk about your typical work day just to paint a picture of, how does it look like? What do you take care of, like on a general day?
A normal working day. Don't think I've ever had one. But I would say taking care of uh, a lot of things. My old manager that I had before joining Klarna was that I was named the global head of shit sandwiches, my informal title, because there's things popping up from everywhere which you need to take care of. But more of a normal working day, I would say to depends on I work quite a lot in like projects, I would say. So we have a project for equal pay, or we have a project doing the compensation review, or we have a project launching a equity scheme. So when those projects are like when you work quite a lot with those kind of projects, then a usual day is to make sure that okay, that you have everything up, that you have everything in place in order to deliver on it. So I would say that taking care of all the admin things around an easy thing could be okay, now we're going to launch a new equity scheme. Okay, do we have all employees uh, do we have all employees uh, in our systems? Do we have the right data for around those employees? Have we managed the communication in a good way? Do we know that the managers out in the organization um, have uh, knowledge about the equity scheme, which of their employees that they are in this kind of equity scheme, making sure that okay, all documents that we have are in place, reviewing like can we do more, can we provide more easy information around these specific topics, or reviewing the documents that goes out to employees like FAQs, like agreements, appendixes, and all of that, and also managing the communication in the project group, basically the stakeholders. Okay, an equity scheme usually concerns, okay, that concerns the senior leadership of the company, because it's usually that you need to have contacts with legal, you need to have contacts with the CEO, CFO, the board, the shareholder, those things always. So being the spider in the net in all of these projects. And I would say it's fairly similar in all of a comp and ben kind of project. So if you do the compensation review, for example, then it's also the same things that I've just spoken about for an equity. You're the spider a little bit in the middle to make sure that everything is handled. You're responsible for the communication towards the employees. You're responsible towards the communication to the managers that they feel informed. You're responsible towards the CEO or CFO to make sure that okay, you're following the budgets, you've allocated the budget, and all of like the communications out to the employees. I would say that a normal working day is a little bit managing all of those.
Yeah. And one thing that's coming to my mind is like, as you're saying that typically like parallelly we are working on like multiple projects at the same time. And so when let's say you already are like at a senior position and you have like some people reporting to you, um you like personally you cannot, it's not possible for you to get into like the nitty-gritties of everything, but then you have to sign everything off, being like the senior leader, and all of this data is like super sensitive. Some of them are like legally bounding as well. How would you manage that situation typically, where you, even though you cannot get into like the details, you have to be sure about what's being signed off and what's being sent?
Yeah, Howard, I think that's one of my strengths. I'm a big generalist, I guess. I'm trying to surround myself with people who are better than me in things where I'm not as good, and being into the nitty-gritty details might not be my strength. But I'm quite good at having an overall kind of understanding of, okay, it should look roughly like this. And if it doesn't, if it goes a bit outside of how I picture it, then I can quite easily uh, like note that something isn't really right.
So again, tying it back to like the initial point where you mentioned the thing about trust. So basically, you trust your team, like in that sense.
I'm looking at my leadership, or how my leadership looks. It's very a trusting kind of leadership. I would say that I choose to trust everyone around me up until they've made me regret it. I'm trying to be very available and come with my input and always be around, but not being like trying not to engage too much in the work that's been done. Instead, trusting that okay, if you face like challenges or difficulties throughout this project, I'm always there to be able to support and to help. But if you don't say anything, I trust that you will do the work that you signed up for. Um, so I guess that's how I'm managing it.
Hmm. I think that's a good way as well. Like, given, I mean, I can just say that given that there are so many things that you would be working on, it's just humanly not possible to, anyways, get into everything. So, I think this is one of the best tactical strategies to just hire like the best people and then start by trusting them. And then more often than not, people generally deliver because they're also like, I have to give my best work, and people generally have this work ethics with them. So, um, I think it should generally work. But then, yeah, as you said, unless you have to have you've had to regret it.
No, and a little bit to that as well is that I think in your professional life, there will always be situations where you don't have time to deliver a fantastic results. You need to be able to decide, okay, is this something where we can be good enough with the things that we deliver? Or is this a project where everything really needs to be like flawless and everything needs to be perfect? To be able to have that, okay, now we don't have the time. Is this super important that we need to review this 100 times more, or is it that something, okay, it's good enough, we can release it because it's fairly okay? I think that that's one of the key aspects as well when you are in a very uh, like when there's a lot of things to do, to be able to say, okay, when is enough? uh, okay, we deliver on a really really high level, but we don't have to deliver on like world record level every time because that won't be doable. We're fine with the European record sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, totally. I think it's basically categorizing in like urgent, important, and then try to prioritize based on that. Also the deliverability part, like how much, what quality result do you want to
So if it's
the actual
prison down the
specific.
line, if there's prison down the line, then we need to be very very good. Then
Yeah,
we can't leave
exactly.
anything.
Yeah,
So
we had
yeah.
this discussion yesterday only where it was like, how much do you focus on what you are delivering? Because of course, like you can produce as you're saying, like the best quality work, but that will take time, and then you have to prioritize other things as well. So, I think that skill definitely helps a lot in those kind of situations. And Tobias, because you are leading like a big team and you're working in a multi national organization with a lot of people, how are you seeing like the trends in the compensation and benefits space? And are you seeing like some specific area that we are kind of heading towards?
I think it's a very interesting time right now because there's so many things happening. Just taking the pandemic that we basically lived through, and but we changed the way of how we work. Um, Now more and more companies want the employees to come back to the offices, and most employees don't want to come back to the offices, or at least not 5 days a week like it was before. So I think a lot of things comes like how do we manage that? How do we keep the companies happy? How do we keep the employees happy? What do we need to do in order to have like a good working environment for both the employers and the employees in a good way? And I think many or a lot of companies, I would say all, basically struggle in how to find a good balance. And so I think that that's one of the trends to continue to work on. Okay, how should that balance look? What is the best for both the employers and the employees? And I don't. That's not a. There's not one answer to that topic, of course, and it will differ depending what kind of company you are. And it's like obviously, the launch of ChatGPT last year has really just exploded the the ways and will change the way we work as well, and how we can take on that and really benefit from it. I would say, and that's something that will come more and more, even though it's already exploded in a way. Apart from that, I also think that with the equal pay, kind of the new directive, which would be the pay transparency directive, I think that that will focus on, and there will be a lot of focus on like on those topics, which I think is really good. I think we can then everything in the directive might not be fantastic for employers. It will be difficult. It will be a bit challenging. Just like how should we present the data in a good way so it's not misinterpreted? But the the fact that the directive has put this area like on a priority list for comp and ben, like and we're able to get the management to listen as well. Because before, a lot of complement like divisions have tried to lift these kind of discussions, but maybe the response hasn't been fantastic all the time. That okay, yeah, let's work on that. Let's put something in our annual report that we're doing equal work as well. But now with the directive, that will help that kind of development, I think.
It has become like a mandate now, so has to be done.
Exactly. It has to be done. So whether you like it or not, in the different
It's no more
executive,
good to have. It's like a must have.
exactly. So I think that's really good. And then like I think a lot of things ties into these three kind of areas. But what kind of benefits should we? It's like, is it enough with pension, some insurances, or what like getting people back to the office, or employees back to the office? Okay, what kind of benefits should we provide? And all the it's like ESG kind of related topics, given the climate change discussions, which are on everyone's agendas, I guess. So I think that
Yeah.
those from that point of view, how can we change the benefits? What kind of looking at Sweden, for example, where the pensions are invested, the amounts which we pay in, I think it's 60 million euros a day or something, which is contributed into private or into occupational pensions in Sweden. It's like a ridiculously high amount. How can we invest those money in a good way so that it actually comes to some sort of good use? And I think the companies who start looking at, okay, how do we want our employees' pension money to be invested? What kind of policy should we have? How should we do that? And also the providers, how should we be good in this area? So that's also like some sort of trend, I guess.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think personally, like, this is my personal opinion that, for example, around the pay transparency, like to begin with, it's going to be complicated because that has not been the way companies have generally operated. But I think, like, just if looking at it 5 years down the line, I think it's just going to make things much more simpler because, this is how it is. Like, I mean, we'll come to a state where it'll be like, okay, this is how it is. This is how it is for this particular company. This is where we are placing ourselves. And then employees can take their call on, whether to join or not. And also, like, I think in general, it'll be good for the employees in general because, you'll basically lift the whole space like a little bit because everybody will be like fighting for competition and those kind of things. So I think it'll just make it easier. Um, and how do you see AI playing a role? Like, do you see AI taking up comp and ben jobs as well?
Probably. Um, I don't think I would be out of work. I think but there's tons of different like admin task. Like, okay, how should we allocate our compensation budget, which is a huge topic every year in all like complement functions. I think that through AI, that kind of allocation will be done better. I think it will be done much quicker and more accurate in the end. Like the analytics of, okay, how do we pay people together with the pay transparency? I think AI can have a great role in that, making people like myself better at what we do, providing better analytics, providing better support to the organization, doing compensation in a better way, I would say.
I see it as if you have like more time to focus on your strategic aspects rather than spending time on like the admin stuff, like in case of an RSU, for example, granting investing, like if that can be automated,
Yeah,
then you can spend a lot more time on the actual equity strategies. I think which is going to make it much more easier for comp and ben people and the senior management and the employees, like everybody, like more accuracy there. So
yeah. But would it take jobs? Probably, because we don't need to do all the admin things around it, so which will probably save us time, and you can, as you say, spend time on different things.
yeah. And so, Tobias, a last thing from my side is around if somebody wants to start working in comp and ben area or is already working in this space, what do you see as like the top skills that they should start working on? Like we spoke a lot about communications earlier, but then like hard skills. So from a content perspective, like what kind of skills should they start focusing on to be like a rock star in this area?
Uh, Being able to like see the connections in comp and ben. I would say that to learn like quite a quite a bit around a lot of topics, so that you look at the entire comp and ben spectra. It's like you do, if you want to be in a senior position in compensation and benefits, that you can see then that you don't, okay, my specialty is equity, and I can do everything within equity, or I can do everything within the job structure. I'm fantastic with doing job structures and those kind of analysis. If you want to do, if you want to have more of a senior role, I would say that you need to learn a little bit about job structures and compensation bands. You need to know a little bit around equity. You need to learn a little bit around benefits, a little bit around pensions, so you're able to see the bigger picture. And then, of course, that you can be an expert within, you be stronger in job structures or stronger within equity compensation or whatever it might be. But trying to be very curious and know, okay, executive compensation. How do we do executive compensation? How do we do a compensation review? So my advice would be trying to get an overall understanding of the entire comp and ben area, and be very, very open to that, and take on a role as compensation benefits specialist, being involved in different areas, because so you're able to learn the full spectrum of it. I think that would be my, and have a very, you need to like to be some sort in the middle and have a lot of like a lot of connections with different stakeholders. Like you have everyone from like maybe
All over
like
the place.
all over the place, from the lowest paid employee to the CEO, who's usually the highest paid employee. You need to enjoy having that kind of communications with everyone, and
Yeah.
be generally interested in each and every one of the employees of the company. Of course, you will have more to do with certain stakeholders than the entire company, but to really like to be that person who has connections with, well, finance, with legal, with sales, because you might need to do sales commissions and understand the product that they are selling, because you need to do, okay, this is our commission structure. You need to be able to, okay, marketing, okay, how they usually have bonus plans, okay, how do I speak to marketing? That I would say to to develop the like knowledge around the full spectrum of compensation and benefit, and also liking the, like, being in the middle, and being able to talk to everyone.
Yeah. I mean, totally agree. Like, I cannot agree more. It's like a lot of stakeholder management that you do, and you have to be comfortable with that because it's like people will reach out to you for like the most basic questions and the most complicated stuff, and
Yeah.
you should be able to handle all of that. And I think one, I just would want to add like one advice that you gave me during our conversation, which was around, like looking at the right things. So basically, like how I see it is that because you are dealing with like so many people from so many areas, things that might be important to like one stakeholder might not be important to the other stakeholder. So there's no like one thing works for everybody. You have to be able to kind of step into the shoes of the person who is asking for some kind of information, and then see like what's important for them, like what are they actually trying to get out of this information. And then I think that basically customizes your input to those people, which becomes much more relevant for them then. Otherwise it's just passing on like data. But then how do you customize it to like individual people, and what questions to ask? I think that becomes like a super important skill as well.
Yeah, I fully agree, and that's one of the things that I enjoy with, like, getting to know people. And as I said, like, you need to be able to speak to everyone in the company, and that really goes into that. Okay, how do I speak to someone in marketing, um, who have the most prominent title that anyone has ever had? Because marketing is usually very creative, also when it comes to their own titles. Um,
Yeah.
which is fun. Okay, how do I like tailor my communication, tailor my way of providing information to this person in order to have the most like successful kind of partnership?
Yeah, totally agree. I think it has been a super wonderful conversation, Tobias. A lot of things that you've shared today is like so relevant to how we work and how we do stuff and what's going to happen in the future. I'm sure it's going to be like super valuable for anybody who listens to it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's been these questions are always fun to discuss, and if someone can learn something, that's just fun.
Hi everyone. I hope you had fun listening to the session and could take away something interesting for yourself, as I did for myself. If you like the content, subscribe to it. And if you have any feedback, reach out to us directly via LinkedIn or feel free to write in the comments below and I will have a look. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a nice day.